Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise for the singing of the national anthem led by Miss Preeta Chhabra.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched was so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert Bridgman. I'm the Executive Vice President with Beacon College. It is my distinct privilege to introduce the third President of Beacon College, President George J. Haggerty. President Haggerty.
Good morning and welcome. There was this great book by Gary Wills. He won the Pulitzer Prize for a book called Lincoln at Gettysburg, but then he wrote this book on leadership in 1995. It was called Certain Trumpets. And he said, taking from a biblical passage and adapting it a bit, he said, "For if the trumpets give an uncertain call, who will be called to act?" We have been graced today by the certain trumpets of Beacon College. These are our founders. Our founders are incredibly special. They were beckoned by a need, the need to provide a quality, accredited undergraduate education to students, exclusively to students with learning disabilities, ADHD, and other learning differences. They were called to act. They incorporated this institution. They did all that was necessary to establish a nonprofit institution of higher education. They led with purpose. They knew that their mission was a special one and that it would affect the lives of many students. They found their calling. All of these people are incredible people in their own right, but they found a calling in this college and in the futures and establishing the futures of the students who we serve. And they acted selflessly and with courage. And as you hear some of the stories in the citations, you'll realize that this was not an easy task. What were some of the practical things in founding a college? And nobody in their right mind in 1989 should have thought of founding a college, because the 90s were tough on private institutions of higher education. Well, they had to think of, where do we locate the institution? They had to think about, how do we find our faculty and staff to serve students? that are uniquely motivated to serve these students. They had to think about the facilities. They had to think about something that's very dear to my heart, the finances of the institution. How were you going to pay the bills? And as you will learn, the institution was quite small when it started. So these people who grace the stage today are the reason that this institution survived, prevailed, and now thrives. And in welcoming you and welcoming them, I want to thank them. Again, welcome to this magnificent and milestone day, and we look forward to this ceremony.
Thank you, President Haggerty. It is now my privilege to introduce to you Ms. Eileen Marinakis, Chair of the Board of Trustees of Beacon College.
Good morning. As the Chair of the Board of Trustees of Beacon College, it is my privilege to be here with you today, honoring our past and looking to the future. In 1989, Congress was working on the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was destined to become law in 1990. At the same time, a group of parents, including Pat and Peter Latham, whom we are fortunate to have here with us today, set about pursuing a visionary quest, finding appropriate higher education opportunities for their sons and daughters with learning disabilities. When their search yielded no results, this small group of dedicated individuals, including Sylvia Neal and Kay Timoney, deemed it necessary to found a college that would serve this interest, and we have all benefited from their dedication to this cause. The college founded a home among the quaint streets and small businesses of downtown Leesburg, Florida. Beacon College was incorporated in May of 1989 and officially opened its doors to a total of 31 students in September of that year. Dr. Marcia Glein served as the college's founding president. The original campus consisted of only 2 buildings. The store building, currently the Center for Student Success, housed a dining hall, a library, classrooms, study rooms, and faculty offices. Across the street was located the administration building, which since has been upgraded to a beautiful new structure. If you haven't visited campus, it's a must-do. In 1992, Deborah Brodbeck became president of the college during a period of reorganization and expansion. She was partnered by another educational leader, Vice President Dr. Deborah Townley. The college offered just one academic major, human services. The curriculum has continuously grown over the years based on student needs and interests and the employment sector. Our curriculum today includes 6 majors and multiple minors. Most recently, the studio arts major was approved, providing a much-needed creative outlet for our student population. The year 2003 brought a major milestone. The college became fully accredited by SACS. That's the acronym. Their true title is the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. Several of the people who were instrumental in preparing for and securing accreditation with SACS included President Brodbeck, Dr. Ron Dowdy, and Diana Wade, who served as our librarian, all of whom are here today with us today to be honored for this and their many other accomplishments. This accreditation established Beacon College's presence in the arena of higher education. Beacon College has been fortunate to be helmed by highly qualified educational leaders, innovative and visionary thinkers who remain true to the mission of the college while striving for future development and growth. In 2013, Dr. George J. Haggerty was appointed president. This brought a new first to the college when a formal inauguration ceremony was held to commemorate the start of his tenure. In Dr. Haggerty's term thus far, the focus has been on promoting Beacon College in the national and to some extent international higher education market, identifying us as a leader in providing a high quality and affordable college experience to students with learning disabilities and ADHD. Additionally, the college is poised for growth. Dr. Haggerty has been developing a plan to bring the college into the future while honoring the singular mission upon which it was founded. Here we stand in 2014, perched on the strong shoulders of those who contributed to the success of the college, some of them gracing the stage today as honorees. On these shoulders, we confidently look to the promising future for Beacon, our students and our alumni. And so, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I again wish you a warm welcome and express the appreciation of a graceful community to all who join us today to be honored and recognized. The board and I take great pride in knowing that their dedication, that of our founders, continues today in the work of our faculty, staff, and the students who call Beacon College their academic home. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We stand today because a focused, forward-thinking group of parents recognize that many students who learn differently possess extraordinary abilities and life-changing ambitions, gifts that could be realized only by the benefit of a competitive undergraduate education. Today we celebrate and thank the individuals whose commitment, devotion, and talent sculptured the Beacon College of today and who have touched the lives of hundreds of men and women. Now I'd like to invite Mr. and Mrs. Peter Latham to join Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis at the center of the stage.
Quite simply, Beacon College was founded on the hopes and vision of people like Patricia and Peter Latham, who dared to dream of a college dedicated to serving students with learning disabilities. To others, it seemed an unreachable goal. Both successful attorneys and the parents of a son with a learning disability, the Lathams recognized that the higher education needs of people who learn differently were not being met. Passionate about the need to provide a college education with the right academic environment for their son and other students with learning disabilities, Patricia and Peter founded a parent team to establish Beacon College. When the college was founded in 1989, the Board of Trustees consisted of just 3 members, the Lathams and Marcia Glines, Beacon's first president. Together, the trio navigated the complex legal and business maze involved in establishing a college, providing the crucial oversight needed for a strong foundation. They also played a key role in choosing the right location, negotiating with community and property owners, and recognizing the potential of the site for future college growth. They even helped choose the college's name. As Beacon's founding couple, Patricia and Peter are living proof that with foresight, tenacity, and love, dreams truly do come true. We owe our very existence to your faith and vision in the power of what can be, and look forward to an even brighter future.
I would now like to invite Mrs. Kimberly Baggett to join Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis at the center of the stage. Kim Baggett first came to Beacon College in 1994 from a local temp agency. She stayed 20 years, surely the longest temp assignment the agency ever had. Now Beacon's longest-serving employee, Kim has held just about every position imaginable. She started out as a receptionist when the college only had 10 staff, 20 students, and 2 buildings. She took on various roles as needed, working in accounts payable, working as the registrar, cataloging books for the newly formed library at the start of the regional accreditation process, and processing financial aid. She also worked with student services, organizing and attending student outings, and even opening her home to students over the holidays. Kim later became Director of Human Resources and then Associate Vice President of Human Resources. She implemented new initiatives benefiting Beacon employees, including the popular wellness program. Kim also was a student, earning her undergraduate and graduate degrees as a Beacon College employee. And after receiving her master's degree in 2011, she began teaching at Beacon as an adjunct professor. And she is currently pursuing her doctoral degree. Beacon has grown substantially since Kim first began working here. Thankfully, we can rely on you, Kim, to continue. We appreciate all that you do every day to make our college an ever better place for our students, our faculty, and our staff. Thank you, Kim.
I would like to invite President Emeritus Deborah Broadbeck to join Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis at the center of the stage. The average tenure of a college president is less than 9 years, but Beacon College counts itself exceedingly fortunate to have been guided by Deborah Broadbeck's inspired leadership for 19 of its most transformative years. Throughout her remarkable career, Deborah has been a pioneering educator and ardent advocate for students with learning disabilities. A psychologist by training, she opened new doors of educational opportunity for thousands of youngsters, including Project Learn, New York's acclaimed K-12 program for students who learn differently. Deborah initially came to Beacon College as a consultant, bringing a deep understanding of the unique needs and potential of students who learn differently. She was persuaded to take on the role of president, and with her guidance, the college gained national recognition for its life-changing educational approach. The Broadbeck presidency will be remembered for its many remarkable achievements. They include the development of Beacon's holistic approach for student success, including its signature academic mentoring program, the expansion of our campus footprint from 2 to 6 buildings, the securing of vital academic accreditation, and the enhancement of student services. The legacy of her tireless efforts can also be seen in the college's branding, recruiting, finances, fundraising, and community outreach. The early years of a college or university are among its most critical, shaping its direction, laying the foundations for its future, and creating the momentum for its growth and security. In large measure, Beacon College owes much of what it is today to the devoted efforts of Deborah Broadbeck, whom we honor as our President Emeritus. Thank you, Deborah, for your many years of faithful leadership and vision.
It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Shelley Chandler, Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs, who will introduce our guest speaker this morning.
Thank you. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Gary Karton. Gary was introduced to us by Daryl Brewer, father of Beacon College student Antonio Myers. Thank you, Daryl, for the introduction. Gary began his career as a sports writer at the Washington Post. For the past 17 years, Gary has worked with parents and children at nonprofit organizations, including the Welfare to Work Partnership and the Save Kids Worldwide. Gary is also an author He wrote No Free Lunch, One Man's Journey from Welfare to the American Dream. He is currently working on a spirit animal fantasy series for kids 7 to 13 years of age. The first book in his series has earned him a number of literary awards. But what is really relevant to us at Beacon College is that Gary grew up with a learning disability. Gary struggled with dyslexia all throughout school. He was inspired by a teacher, and Gary accommodated his learning disability to become a successful author today. So each of us at Beacon College hope that we too, in the same manner, can inspire our students. Soon perhaps to surpass J.K. Rowling. Here, please welcome Mr. Gary Karton.
Thank you, everybody, so much for having me. I like to keep my expectations very low, so I don't think I'll be surpassing J.K. Rowling's anytime soon. I cannot thank President Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis and everybody for inviting me here today to be part of this celebration. People say thank you, and I just say I can't think of any other place I would rather be. Everything that you guys do is exactly what I believe in. It's what I've grown up with, and it's just I can't even believe I'm sitting here when they're saying all these great things about people. I'm like, I don't think I belong here, but I really appreciate being here. To the founders, I could probably spend my entire time talking about how amazing you are. But instead, I will probably just start by saying you're heroes. I'm sure you've heard that before. The difference that you've made in people's lives is the greatest gift you can give. And I just thank you on behalf of everyone who's grown up struggling to learn. I thank you so much for what you did. To the parents who send your kids here, if your kids are anything like mine, they might not thank you as much as you probably deserve. And if they do thank you, then I'm going to need some parenting advice after this, please. But again, as someone who grew up struggling to learn and someone who didn't always appreciate the adults in my life who tried to inspire me, encourage me, thank you so much for what you're doing to guide your kids and give them opportunities. And really, opportunities is what it's all about. And finally, to the students, my favorite part, I want to say thank you for being awesome. I want to explain that a little bit. I know I don't know you, although I feel like I do from hearing stories about the students that go here. My wife works for George Mason University. She said, do not say kids, and I totally blew that. About the students who go here, I have a really strong belief that every single person has special powers. I know that sounds corny, so hear me out real quick. It doesn't mean you can fly, and when I'm talking to younger kids, I say don't jump off the roof and pretend like you can fly. And when I was a kid, I used to let spiders crawl on me, and I was hoping to get Spider-Man's powers if they bit me, which I knew it was a long shot, but I thought it'd be worth the risk if that could happen, and I don't recommend that either. Those spider bites itch, and I spent a lot of time in oatmeal baths and stuff like that. But I do believe that there's something every person has that's extraordinary that makes them amazing, whether it's you can run just a little bit faster, you're a little bit more creative, you are an artist, you love music, you can see the good in everybody, which my wife has that special power. You can see that somebody's a little bit down and maybe say just the right thing to make them feel better. Those are amazing gifts that people have, and I believe that if you believe in them and you work hard enough, those special powers will continue to grow your entire life. So, only 17 more pages to go. I'm just kidding. Of course, I did not always feel this way. You know, growing up, you could have bet a lot of money that I would not be here right now talking to you. And recently, you can bet even more money that I'd not be in a suit. My kids, when I walked out with this, were like, "Are you going to a Halloween party?" You know, they're just, especially with this orange tie, just me in a suit is very, very rare. But again, I'm happy to do anything for this event. But when I was in the 3rd grade, I got pulled out of my reading class, which was, of course, humiliating. And the teacher pulled me aside and she said, "Do you know what a learning disability is?" And I said, "No." And she said, "It's a gift." She said, "You learn things and you see things differently than other people, but different is good." And every Wednesday we would get together and we would work on ways for me to improve my reading. We would tape record my voice. In those days they had these little, it was almost like a credit card machine, and you'd swipe the card through and you'd be able to hear the voice so I could read into it and hear what I was saying, help my mind process a little bit better. There was not, of course, a lot of things I liked to read, but I was really into the Cubs, so we read, the sports section, and those were short articles I can read. And we also worked on, for some reason, she loved accents. She wanted us to always talk in these accents. Irish was her favorite, so she would teach me how to say She said shillelagh. She's like, if he hits me over the head with the shillelagh, you could practice Irish accent by just saying the word shillelagh. So I don't know what that was all about, but it was fun. And at the end of every Wednesday, she would say to me, remember, different, you see things differently and you learn things differently than most people, but different is good. So do you guys think that made me feel any better? It did not. It did nothing for me, to be perfectly honest, back then. I didn't feel like different was good. I felt like different was bad. I felt like I was stupid, to be honest, pretty stupid. I felt like I was embarrassed. I was thinking, this is the one thing everyone says reading is the one thing you need to do to be successful in life. It's so important. And read, and it was something that I really struggled to do. Before my 10th birthday, I was with my Aunt Judy, who's taught for 32 years, amazing lover of books. For her birthday every year, I would let her take me to a museum, basically was my present for her. I told her how I thought I might want to be an architect. So a few days later at my birthday, I opened up the present from her, and it was a book about architecture. An awesomely thoughtful, completely lame present for someone who hated to read. I was like, Aunt Judy, you're killing me here. What are you doing? And what my aunt and all these other amazing adults like you guys didn't necessarily, I'm not saying you don't understand, but what they didn't understand is that you couldn't just tell someone to love to read. They're like, reading is amazing. I wanted to love to read. I would have loved to love to read. My family loved to read. My brother, my sister, they're voracious readers. The kids at school, I remember we would sit in class and you'd have to read out loud. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is brutal. And I read out loud. The way I would have to read, I'd have to focus on every word. So it would be like, the dog went to the, that's the way I would have to read to really read out loud, which is not like the coolest thing in the world. And so I would count ahead to get to my paragraph, and then I would just practice it over and over again. Except for this one kid, when he ever got a small paragraph, he'd be like, oh, my paragraph was so short. Can I please read another paragraph? My teacher would be like, oh, Billy, thank you so much. Yeah, that'd be great. And I'm like, I hate you, Billy, so much for doing that. And I really spent, after the 3rd grade, I went to another school after that, and I spent the next, all the way through really college, figuring out ways to avoid reading. I didn't talk about I'd never mentioned my learning disability to anybody ever again. I really spent, and I could go on and on about all the different ways that I avoided reading. Some of them I'm not too proud of. But one of the things I did was, especially as I got older in high school and you had to do research reports, was instead of going to the library, and in those days you had microfiche, you'd have to go on, you'd read all the articles in these thick books. It just was not happening for me. That was never going to happen. I would interview people. I'd open up, if I had a report on the Civil War, I would open up the phone book and look up Civil War, and it might be some store about, sells artifacts or whatever. And I would call them up and I'd say, does anyone know anything about the Civil War there? And they'd hang up on me. And I'd call up another one, use one of my voices, and be like, oh, I just question, my voices about, I'm just curious if anyone knows anything about the Civil War. And they would say no, but they would give me another person to call in and another person. And pretty soon, I was talking to a professor at Northwestern, who was a Civil War buff. And I could interview them and ask these questions and get these great stories about the Civil War that you might not necessarily be able to get in a book. And I loved doing that, and I also loved asking the person questions about why they became interested in loving the Civil War. It wasn't only the Civil War that interested me, it was these people and how they developed this love. I always thought the coolest thing in the world was knowing what you wanted to be when you grow up. And it always fascinates me, people that have this and love things. I think it's so cool, people that have a passion, like the founders who started this, and I've heard some of these speeches. It's just the coolest thing in the world to me. So I developed this kind of interest in asking questions and digging deeper. And when I got my job at the Washington Post, which was totally lucked into right out of college, and I was way, way over my head. I mean, this was a joke almost. But, it was an amazing opportunity. And the high school sports editor, the one thing he told me, he said that everybody has a great story. And all you got to do is ask questions, and you can dig that out. And so that was at least one thing, as I was around all these incredible writers who were so much better than I was. The one thing I felt comfortable doing was talking to people and asking questions and getting their stories. But the key for me was really in college. And that's why, being here, having a college like this, I'm just so psyched for every single student that goes here. Because for me, college was, I took a social psych course, and in it in the syllabus said you had to read a book every month. And I was like, oh my gosh. Again, I would spend all my time figuring out how I was going to it just did not seem realistic. But my professor, instead of having to read the book and write about what the book was about, He said, read the book and write about how it makes you feel or what it makes you think about. So for me, this was great. I could read the first 3 sentences and my mind would already be off somewhere else. Genuinely thinking about what those first 3 sentences or first paragraph or first chapter was about. And I would write that. And I would write these papers just talking about how I feel and talking about the way I looked at things. And he loved it. And he did, he was really psyched, and I got good grades. And it was then that I made the decision that I was not going to be afraid to try anymore. And that was a really big time for me in college, because in high school, again, and all through up, I was very shy. My friends kind of knew me. I had 1 or 2 close friends, but if you asked anyone else about me, they wouldn't even know me probably. I never tried things I wanted to do. I was always kind of sit back and have regrets about not trying things. And in college, I decided that I was going to change that, and I was going to start trying things. And more importantly than trying, I was not going to be afraid to fail. I had the confidence that failing, why does failing have to be such a bad thing? I coach all the time now. I coach all my kids' sports, and you get these parents who the team loses a couple games and they're all worked up. These 11-year-old kids are losing. I'm like, there's nothing bad about losing when you're 11 years old. We don't want to win every game. You can learn a lot from losing. Of course, they don't believe in that. It's very tough to explain. So I'm not the most popular coach in the world. But, failure does not have to be a bad thing. And if you're not afraid to try and you're not afraid to fail, the possibilities are endless. And so that was a really, really big time for me. When I had kids of my own, I promised myself that I would do everything in my power to make sure that they loved reading. I didn't want them to go through what I went through. And I knew from my experience, you can't just lecture. You can't just say, reading is important. It's really important that you do this. So that was the first time in my life that I really embraced reading. They said that you need to be an example. So when I would hear them come in, I would grab a book real quick and pretend like I was reading. Of course I wasn't, but I would pretend like I was. I'm not proud of that. I'm trying to get better. But what I would do is I would read to them all the time. From the time they were even before they could even understand, we would read books. Dr. Seuss, Peter and the Starcatchers, Series of Unfortunate Events. When my aunt told me that Atticus Finch was voted the most popular literary hero of all time, we read To Kill a Mockingbird just to see if this guy was better than Spider-Man, which he wasn't. I don't know if anyone liked that book. It wasn't even close. I was outraged at that. I'm like, he's good. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but Spider-Man, come on. When my kids pleaded for one more chapter, I would always say yes, no matter how late it got. I figured if they wanted to read again, I would keep reading. Of course, all the parents out there know what kids are like when they're overtired and they were torturous the next day, but I would do it again and again the next night and the next night after that. And we basically turned reading into a team sport. We used all the voices that I had been, all the accents that I'd used. I got a perfect Shaggy impersonation for Scooby-Doo. I used my Clinton and Bush voices for different things. I didn't know that at the time, but so we would just read and we would guess what happened next, and we would laugh all the time. And if we didn't like a book, we'd put it away. And even when my kids got older, my younger son Brody's a voracious reader, insane. He got to the point where he didn't even want to read with me anymore because he would sit next to me and be like, "Dad, you're reading these words wrong." I'm like, "Just listen. You don't have to watch every little thing." So he would just read. He would just read on his own. But my older son, we would still read together. And sometimes when he was 12 and 13, we'd read "Oh, the Places You Go" or "Planes and Cars and Things That Go," and try to find what Goldbug was, just because it's fun. You don't have to read all these big, thick, fancy books, although those are fun too sometimes. So at one point we were reading books and my kids were starting to predict the endings, and they're like, "Dad, this was good." I'm like, "No, let's just wait and see." And some of them are predictable, so they kind of challenged me to write a book that had an unpredictable ending. And I had written a nonfiction book before, and so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write this book. And that was, talk about something that for the once kind of clicked, just writing these books. And I was always taught to write what you love, what you like to read. And so for me, if I was going to write what I liked, it was going to have to be really good because there's not very much that I like to read. So I wrote about animals, and I wrote about special powers, and I wrote about all these twists and turns, and I made the chapters really, really short because I didn't want, when the teacher tells you to read a chapter and it's 30 pages, you're like, oh my gosh. So this is, 2 or 3 pages, and I left them with cliffhangers. And I made the writing a little bit bigger, so I never understood why they make the writing so small. Even if you're a good reader, like, what are you trying to prove? I don't get that, So, I was able to do all those things, and now it's just such a gift for me to go around and speak to all these schools, and younger kids especially, and I can inspire them, or try to inspire them, to not only read, but to take chances and be creative in whatever way that speaks to them. It doesn't necessarily have to be one way. And that was when I first kind of realized, and I never even thought about this learning disability until that happened. And that's when I finally realized that that was the gift that my third grade teacher was talking about. And that she was right, that being different is good. And there are so many possibilities in the world. And they don't always have to follow one path. There's not one way to do something. There's not one way to learn. There's not one way to dress, thank God. There's not one way to do something, and we can all follow our own paths. And I think that's really, really important, because if you would, people used to tell me, if you want to be a writer, you've got to read a lot. And if I would have believed that, I would have never, ever done this, ever. And I'm shocked that I'm doing it right now, to be perfectly honest. And that doesn't mean it's easy. I need to say this, because I do not consider myself to be a good writer. It is a grind. And I would sit next to people at the post, and they would go, and I'd be like, oh, how do you, I was almost like in high school cheating again on the pen. I'm like, how do you do that? But for me, it is really, really hard. And I don't ever have writer's block, because I just pretend like I'm on deadline, and like I was at the post, and I type away. But when I read, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not good. And I just have to keep working on it and keep working on it. But that challenge is kind of what makes it fun for me. And they're definitely going to have bad days, when you don't think that what you're doing is worthwhile. And I remember one time I was at the Post, it was when I just started, and again, I just was so far in over my head there. But I went to my sports editor sent me out to cover this high school wrestling match. It was my first big thing, and I'd done all my research, and I was ready to go, and it was in a room probably about the size of this stage, and everyone, I don't know if you've ever been to high school wrestling, everyone's on top of each other. It was so awesome and intense, and I wrote my lead, and I was like, if guts and determination are the mark of a true sporting event, then the Super Bowl of sporting events just happened at Wakefield High School, and I wrote this whole big grandiose thing. I tried to send it in, it didn't work. In those days, you had to put your phone on a payphone, and you would go in and you have to send it in over the wires. And if that didn't work, you were torturing everybody at the office, because then you had to take dictation. So mine didn't work. I was like, oh my gosh. But I sent it in, and then you call for questions. And I called, and Neil Greenberger goes, Karton, I sent you to cover a high school sporting event, a high school wrestling match. It's not the Super Bowl. And he goes, not good. Click. And that's a perfect impersonation, by the way, of Neil. And so about a couple days later, I was in there, and feeling, of course, terrible about myself. And there was this big high school football game that they needed to cover. It was 100 miles away. It was going to be over Thanksgiving, and they couldn't get anyone to do it. And I'm like, okay, I usually go home for Thanksgiving, but I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be a go-getter. So I went to him, and I'm like, Neil, I can go do that. I'll go and cover that game for you. And he goes, that's okay, Karton, we're good. And it turns out they didn't even get anybody to cover the game. So I sat there when I was driving home for Thanksgiving. I was thinking to myself, I am as low at the Washington Post as you could possibly be right now. But the thing about it is, I didn't feel bad about it at all. I was like, I got no place to go but up. And it made me realize again that just not being afraid to be down. Of course I was gonna be low. I didn't know what I was doing, and it was kind of almost a feeling of inspiration where I got no place to go but up here. And writing on deadline is an incredible, scary experience. And sometimes you feel great about yourself, and sometimes you feel terrible about yourself, but you're always feeling something about yourself, and it's always that challenge that I loved, and I think is really the value of what we do and what we try to teach and how we try to live. So if you are anything like me, then you have probably zoned out for about 3/4 of the speech by now. So I will finish up by saying this, as I said in the beginning, that there's really nothing cooler to me than chasing a dream, not necessarily attaining the dream, but just having the courage to try. So many people don't try, and if they try once and fail, then they stop trying. But having that courage to chase a dream, to me, there's nothing cooler. And having a place like Beacon that can help those dreams, help you try to accomplish those dreams, is such an amazing thing. It really reminds me, I was thinking about this last night, of the X-Men Mansion. Does anyone ever watch the X-Men or anything like that? Thank you. So of the X-Men Mansion, a place where people with extraordinary abilities can come, be accepted for who they are, and be inspired to go on and do great things. And I promise everybody this, and I'm not saying this to be self-deprecating, I promise everybody here is 100 times smarter than me. There's no doubt in my mind, it's definitely true. And if I can do some of these things, then I promise you guys can do or become anything you can imagine. So thank you very, very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
is now my distinct pleasure to invite Ms. Eileen Marinakis to join Dr. Haggerty at the center of the stage. Eileen Marinakis first stepped onto the Beacon campus in 1993 as a parent searching for the right college for her son Christopher. Today, as chair of Beacon's Board of Trustees, she is at the front line of Beacon's efforts to define and build new opportunities for future generations of students with learning disabilities, ADHD, and ASD. Eileen joined the board in 2006. A year later, she became board secretary, gaining a new degree of appreciation of the challenges that Beacon faced. Eileen was elected chair in 2011, a role she continues in today. Driven by her belief in Beacon's mission and with the unwavering support of her husband, George, Eileen selflessly made the decision to retire from her successful career in nursing to concentrate her efforts on the college and her duties as board chair. Eileen led the 2012 presidential search, resulting in the hiring of Dr. George J. Haggerty, celebrated the dedication of Beacon's first all-new building, Beacon Hall, and helped engineer the future direction of the college. Under her leadership, Beacon also has made significant strides in increasing enrollment and enhancing its national reputation. Eileen's greatest gift to the college, though, is her unshakable faith in Beacon's potential to change the lives of students with learning disabilities and her commitment to ensuring that such potential is met and exceeded. With her leadership, our success is certain.
I would now like to invite Dr. Ron Dowdy to join Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis at the center of the stage. When Ron Dowdy first became associated with Beacon at the start of the 21st century, we were experiencing the many growing pains of a young and emerging institution of higher education. He soon became a key strategic advisor to our college. With his background as a finance reader for the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, and who had just retired from his position at another college, Ron was uniquely qualified to prepare Beacon not only for accreditation, but for financial security too. In 2002, Ron joined Beacon's administrative team as our Vice President of Finance and Administration. And during his tenure, he established key procedures for our financial practices and financial reporting. He worked tirelessly to guarantee that the college met the essential requirements for accreditation and helped to build an operating surplus. With the college in a strong financial position and student growth continuing, Ron turned his attention to strategic planning. And under his guidance, the college acquired and leased new properties and began planning the construction of Beacon Hall. And today, Beacon enjoys great support from the Leesburg community, aided greatly by an economic impact study completed during Ron's tenure that dramatically illustrated the college's many contributions to the city. Ron, a grateful Beacon community recognizes the tremendous leadership, vision, and expertise that you provided to meet the challenges of our growing college and ensure our long-term financial stability.
I would now like to invite Mrs. Sylvia Neal to join Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis at the center of the stage. Sylvia Neal began her association with Beacon during the college's earliest days when her son Blake was one of its students. She would go on to serve the college with incredible dedication, eventually chairing the Board of Trustees for many years. Among the many accomplishments for which Sylvia will be remembered are her innovative fundraising efforts, which helped to stabilize the college's finances during our most vulnerable early years. But what should be remembered most is how Sylvia and her fellow first leaders laid the foundation of what would come. To begin an institution like Beacon is to overcome countless challenges on a daily basis, from limited financial and human resources to educating others about the untapped potential of students who learn differently. How it was accomplished was a miracle and a labor of love. For board members like Sylvia, Beacon was a labor that never ended. They were called upon to help the college address every possible need that arose on a nearly weekly basis. Objectively, they should have failed. But the true secret of Beacon's success was and is the passion of individuals like Sylvia Neal. She understood that Beacon is a cause that deserved and drove her every effort. Sylvia, please accept our profound thanks for all you did over many years to nurture and sustain our college.
I would now like to invite Dr. Terry Ross to join Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis at the center of the stage. How has Terry Ross transformed the lives of Beacon College students? Well, from study abroad to campus organizations, to special curriculum and classrooms, she has played an instrumental role in developing programs that reflect the evolving needs and interests of Beacon students. As our college's longest serving faculty member, Terry has served as a teacher, a mentor, team member, and leader. She opened our eyes to the community and the world around us, from starting a campus recycling program that earned Beacon recognition as a leader to developing our first travel abroad program. She sponsored clubs, including the early sorority Tri Mu, and coordinated the Interdisciplinary Studies Traveling Scholars program to Cuba. With her doctoral level expertise in education for students with learning disabilities, Terry helped create courses and classrooms specially designed to meet their needs. She not only taught classes, but she mentored students as a learning specialist and helped to develop a faculty training program for new professors aimed at providing concrete skills and strategies for working with Beacon students. She also served on the Presidential Search Committee that hired our current leader, Dr. George Haggerty. With 18 years and counting, Terry continues to be an invaluable asset to our students, our faculty, and our college. Her efforts truly have helped to shape and define the unique Beacon experience. Thank you, Terry, for all that you have done and continue to do for your beloved students.
It is my pleasure to now introduce Lake County Commissioner Mr. Tim Sullivan.
Well, thank you very much for this great opportunity to get up and talk about a gem of the greater Lake County community, and that is Beacon College. I had this formal proclamation I was going to read that, and I'll make sure that the college gets that, but I'm going to take a minute of personal preference and talk about someone that had a vision, put the resources behind the vision to come up and go and last 25 years in a highly, highly competitive program, have a high, tremendous graduation rate, be recognized as the best value among colleges and universities and #1 in the state of Florida, and just what you do to provide for the educational opportunities of these students is just amazing. And so I'm just going to not read you the formal thing, and that's going to be the end of my speech because I can't compete with all the great words that were already said here today. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you for what you do in the greater part of Lake County, and continue to do it, and I wish you success on 25 more years as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Leesburg City Manager Al Minner.
I'd like to thank Beacon College for having the city here, and on behalf of the City Commission, would like to welcome Beacon College and the founders. And I wanted to take a quick minute because Mr. Karton said a few things that actually struck a chord with me. I remember those days in 2nd and 3rd grade when you get called out of class and you had to read in front of people. Man, what a drag. And I hated to read so much, I always talked. So if I could, instead of read, talk, then I could get through it. And that goes to this day when I'm in city commission meetings and I get to look at Mr. Knowles giving me the, "You're talking too much." So I was going to use a word today, and in recognition that I actually didn't phase out during the speaker's speech, I'm going to change the word assets to special talents, right? That's what the special gifts, special powers, I was listening, got there, special powers. And one of the things in my job as city manager to do is to recognize special powers and try to take advantage of those to make better community. And of course, we do that in unison with the city commission. And I think people in Leesburg think that Leesburg has a lot of special powers. And one of those special powers that we think we have is Beacon College. You all took a chance in Leesburg. You invested in this community. And now I think the community is flourishing from it. Our downtown is revitalizing. Revitalization is a huge issue for us. So on behalf of the City Commission, I want to say thank you. Thank you for investing in Leesburg. I look forward to working with the staff and the faculty and watching out for the students in our great community. So thank you for your investment in Leesburg, and I look forward to a long relationship and making Beacon College and the city of Leesburg as great as it can be.
I would like now to invite Dr. Deborah Townley to join Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis at the center of the stage. There is a phrase used by project managers when they are involved in initiatives that demand complex creation and problem solving. They say, it's like building a ship already in the water. That is an appropriate summary of the many challenges faced by Dr. Deborah Townley, who uprooted her family to come to Beacon College in 1992 to aid in its preparation for academic accreditation. Beacon was a ship already in the water and moving forward swiftly. Deborah was instrumental in swiftly and flawlessly reevaluating the college's programs. She adjusted them to match the mission of the college, student needs, and the requirements of the accrediting body of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. Deborah began as the college's director of admissions, but soon became the first vice president of academic affairs. She led the college into multiple majors, new methods of student recruitment and retention, enhanced academic and career development support, field placement, and academic mentoring. Beacon is grateful that Deborah was so visionary, practical, and flexible in helping to build and prepare our college to move forward through deep and uncharted waters and prepare it to sail through the inevitable storm or two. The vessel that is Beacon College is stronger today because of her creative and dedicated efforts.
I would like to invite Dr. Richard O. Williams to join Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis at the center of the stage. Dr. Williams, whose daughter Noy is an alumna of Beacon College, served with distinction for many years as a member of our Board of Trustees, including 6 as its chair. His time with Beacon was that critical era after the college's founding, during its first major stage of growth. This is the period when the original vision of an idea or cause expands to encompass even more and to dare to see even further. Dr. Williams was the perfect choice to help expand Beacon's vision. He has led a life in academia as a teacher and researcher with European universities and the World Health Organization in Africa. He has been a pioneer in investment firms and biotechnology. Pause for a moment and reflect what this means in relation to vision. This is someone who has seen the world through the lens of education, business, and science. Then add to that vision the powerful love and affinity that Dr. Williams and his wife share for their daughter, who learns differently. Who better to understand that each individual's vision is unique and important to all of us, and that this institution is blessed in its mission. The legacy that Dr. Williams created at Beacon is an enduring one, and is a lesson we will continue as our mission endures.
I would now like to invite Ms. Diana Wade to join Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis at the center of the stage. Beacon's library is a welcoming place of gathering and reflection for our students. Thanks to the dedicated efforts of Diana Wade, the college's first official librarian. Arriving in early 1996, Diana brought to Beacon an impressive background in library science at a time when the college was seeking initial accreditation by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. She traveled all over Florida to locate quality, affordable academic materials, purchasing more than 4,000 volumes that included an extensive collection of books on learning disabilities, ADHD, and other learning differences. She also created an online catalog and joined the Library Information Resource Network to build Beacon's virtual library. Thanks to Diana's efforts, Sachs approved the library on its first campus visit. In the fall of 1996, she oversaw the move to the library's current location, where it continues expanding to meet the needs of our ever-growing student body. Diana also formed cooperative agreements with other colleges and the Leesburg Public Library so that Beacon students had access to all the resources they needed. Additionally, she helped ensure that Beacon's significant LD materials are available not only to our own students, but also to other colleges and members of the public. Diana truly embodies the importance of sharing knowledge, and every day her work touches the learning of every Beacon student. Thank you, Diana, for your many hours of dedication and caring.
I would now like to invite Dr. Vincent Ziccolella to join Dr. Haggerty and Mrs. Marinakis at the center of the stage. Vinnie Ziccolella has the distinction of being the longest-serving member of Beacon College's Board of Trustees. With an impressive background in special education, he was a natural choice to join the board, and he generously lent his expertise to the needs of students with learning disabilities and ADHD. Vinnie will certainly be remembered as the board's key representative during the college's accreditation process. This process was not merely a milestone. It is one of Beacon's great defining moments in its early history. But Vinnie was critical in another way. Beacon began because there was a need that was recognized by a relatively small group of individuals. From the need came the idea of Beacon. From the idea came the planning for the college's first humble beginnings. Vinnie helped to build Beacon's strategy and communicate the college's very existence and mission. To define this in another way, all he and his fellow board members had to do was change the attitudes of the educational system, redefine a culture, give hope to parents who had little hope, inspire students so they could leap into entirely new lives, and yes, build a brick-and-mortar institution. Vinnie, we thank you for your unwavering leadership and support as we move successfully forward into the 21st century. You will long be remembered for all that you've done.
It is my honor to now introduce Board of Trustees member, Mr. David Knowles.
I am a member of the Board of Trustees. I'm also a city commissioner in the city of Leesburg. I've been a commissioner for 14 years, and at the beginning of each of those years, we have a board meeting and we decide who will be the chairman of the board each year in January. And that person is also named mayor for the next year. I have been named mayor 3 times, and so that allows me bragging rights for both the city of Leesburg and Beacon and the unique institute that we know as Beacon College. 25 years ago, the spark of Beacon College came to life. In those early years, Beacon existed because of the blood, sweat, and tears of its founders. They set the base, they set the style, they set the method for the college which exists today. One of their initial choices was to establish the college in Leesburg, Florida. For those who may not know this, Leesburg is the number 4 location in the United States for retirement. I'm not asking you students to retire here. In fact, I expect you to work harder in the next few years than you will work for the rest of your life. What I want to share with you is that Beacon and Leesburg is a friendly, welcoming place for newcomers. We also enjoy the Goldilocks phenomenon. We are not too big, we're not too small, we're just right. Leesburg is a friendly place to live and grow, and we're glad you're here. A second important part of the founder's choice was geography. While many people don't know where Leesburg is located, and there are 13 Leesburgs in the southeastern United States, we are the one that's 1 hour away from the world's most famous beach, Daytona. We're 1 hour away from the world's most famous entertainment park, Disney World. And we're 1 hour away from professional football in Tampa, professional baseball in St. Petersburg, an hour away from professional basketball in Orlando, and an hour from one of the country's largest universities, University of Central Florida, and an hour away from a very fine, large university at the University of Florida. We're also an average of an hour of 4 international airports: Sanford, Orlando, Tampa, and Leesburg International Airport. In Beacon's early years, we had to be adaptive. We turned a department store and a bank into classrooms. We turned a carpet store into a student center. Recently, we turned a 100-year-old train depot into a new recreation center. Lately, we have become more focused. We've built a state-of-the-art administration building across from the Leesburg Library. And in a very focused move, we've actually bought an apartment complex for student housing. This is a wonderful time for Beacon College, and we're beginning to hit our stride, and our enrollment is burgeoning. Last and certainly not least, you are living in a community that is driven for success. Here you have a campus of over 200, and you are a model for the fellow students who are here. No matter the hurdles, you are here to learn and to succeed and to fulfill your dreams. Congratulations for choosing Beacon College.
It is once again my privilege to invite President Haggerty to the podium for our closing remarks.
I'm well aware of what you're all thinking. There are plates in front of us that don't have any food on them, and so I hope this guy's really brief. So let me just try to tell you just a few things and to be brief. In honoring the past, what should be our future? Well, the legacy left by these founders and by the faculty, staff, and students who have come before us is a magnificent one. And the labors of the founders, the selfless dedication, have left us with 3 or 4 important elements. David Knowles just spoke about it, but it's a singular sense of place and of purpose. We are a national college. 32 states, 6 foreign countries are represented by this institution. but we are also in and of Leesburg proudly. Our founders left us a vital mission that we will continue to keep faith with. We believe in that mission, and we will pursue the vital work that is going to be required to be the premier institution of the arts, sciences, business, and technology, exclusively devoted to the undergraduate education of students with learning disabilities, ADHD, and other learning differences. We also have, from our founders, a mandate. And that mandate is to be what we really realize, we are the best at what we do. If you take a look at our student outcomes, no institution in American higher education, I can assure you, even approaches that. A 76% graduation rate, 82% retention rate, 83% employment and graduate study rate. Nobody is even close. And so our founders have left us with the map, with the mission, and with the mandate. And we fully intend, as we begin to plan for the future, and right now you may or may not know that we have teamed up with the outstanding national firm of Credo for our faculty, our staff, our students, our parents. Some parents were involved in a process yesterday for defining the future of this institution, because our legacy is our future. We have come an extraordinary way with the founders and with all of those who have been part of this community. And as President Emeritus Broadbeck said, it is a community. It's a community effort. And so we're very happy that you are part of this community, and we wish you all well. I know there are many parents, many families here. We wish you all safe home, and now I can proudly say bon appetit.